Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and today is the 27th day of December 2020. And what I wanted to talk to you about was human rights and individual rights, how people get confused over the issue, uh, thinking they actually have rights, that is, human rights, when in reality, they don't have them. It's just a snake oil salesman has introduced this to someone and they think this protects them. When in reality is that um, what takes place is that if we go back in history, the Soviet Union, all the Eastern Bloc countries of the Soviet Union and independent countries also were part of that bloc. They emphasized what we call human rights. And human rights are also guaranteed by the Constitution of the United Nations. But it's interesting, though, those countries never really actually protected their people. That is the individual people, the individual person. Think about it. They were what I call told they were rights they had, but they didn't have any rights. It was based upon what they decided to do. Many were during the days of the communist takeover of the Russia and eventually Soviet Union, was to send people who didn't agree with the government to Siberia to work in hard labor. Are you aware of that? Do you care? Are you aware that in the Soviet Union, probably 80 million people were killed? I'm not talking about people who were in the military. I'm talking about people who were killed by the Lenin and Joseph Stalin, who killed these people and were ruthless. Most of what we know is from Alexander Solzhenitsyn of what the gulags were like. So you could be actually never said anything about the government whatsoever, or as Solzhenitsyn was actually wrote something back in a letter. He was in the army, the Russian army, because the Soviet Union army, and guess what? The authorities found out. You see, they found out, and next thing you know, he's considered a enemy of the state. And so this is where we're at. People really think this is, great. And the only country I know of that has individual rights, and those rights are being taken away from us, is the United States. You see, that's where communitarianism laws are coming into place, and that's how they are changing the laws right now. That you will no longer have those individual rights. It will be based upon the community. And so we know with that, it will be a sad state for many people because they won't have any rights. And if the rights are not based upon natural law, you really don't have any rights. A piece of paper doesn't guarantee you that you have rights. This is a piece of paper, you see. But natural law is completely different. It's organic. It's not artificial. You see, everything in our lives right now, as we look around ourselves, is artificial. Our food is artificial. They put artificial colors in it. Nothing of real essence in it. Not organic. That is what natural law is about. It's actually organic. It's based upon, very simple principle. It says, I don't do anything bad to you because I don't want bad to be coming back to me. I don't want to have that in my life. And so that's what transpires. And so most people won't take this subject seriously at all, you see. And they don't realize this. And this was not this is history. This is mainline history. Even they would say that in the Soviet Union, China, Poland, Eastern Germany, all of the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Bulgaria, Romania, at one time Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, and then many of the other Soviet republics, Union republics that were a part of that. I may be missing some. Well, actually, Ukraine is another major one. Most people don't even realize what happened in Ukraine under Joseph Stalin, who actually came in to feed his own people and sold the grain. Now, follow this, folks, just to give you an idea of what type of leader this person was, Stalin. He was selling his own government. They had wheat, and they were selling it, you see, to foreigners, and they were starving the people not only in Russia. And so what he did simply is they came into Ukraine and took the wheat from everyone and let them starve. All for the benefit of simply is getting more money to build military power. No one knows this. No one even studies this. They say, well, the Soviet Union fell in 1989. It's all over with. Well, that's communism. And what they've done simply is merge the two together now. And most are not aware of it. They know something's going on. It's the merging of capitalism with communism. And that's communitarianism. Communitarianism basically says you don't have personal rights. You don't have any individual rights. All it counts is simply what the community says. So if the community says that you're doing something bad, then you obviously must be a bad person. You never are given a chance to even defend yourself. They will steal your land for the betterment of the community. What the hell is going on here? You see? And so it's a gradualism, which is what's been going on for ever since this concept of the United States was created. It's been whittling away gradually. And so what we're looking at today simply is, we have human rights. Oh, great. Fucking great. Human rights don't give you anything. Piece of paper don't guarantee you anything. Unless people start understanding what their rights are, which is frankly the natural law, there is not going to be anyone who actually says, wait a minute, I want to know the truth of this whole thing. And most people don't even know where to look. I'm a student of what took place in political science. I argued with my political science professors in my day in the early 80s and late 70s. And their thinking. I knew that basically what we was doing, that is basically attacking the supposedly communist countries or fighting them, supposedly to give these people freedom, when reality it wasn't giving them freedom at all. It was usually a lot of it to do with just simply sending our men over and killing themselves or killing others, no matter what the odds were, and just being used. And then actually the Defense Department, the defense industry was benefiting from this because they would sell more and more weapons to the United States government, you see. And so what transpired is simply is that we didn't do a whole lot, you see. And it's actually, when you look around and see how our military was used and bundled and foolishly used in the past and still is for worthless causes, because it benefits those who are well off. But I've gotten off tangent here. The whole point here simply is individual rights are far more important than human rights, because there is a way of actually defending yourself in an independent rights and based upon law. But in a communitarianism, you won't have any rights, folks. There won't be anything. There won't be any way of defending yourself, period. And so I have a book here. I think I've suggested this before. The book is from a lady who lived in Seattle, who watched all this watch this take place. It's a lady named Nikki, Nikiraa, Pana, spelled Rapana, I think is how you pronounce it. The book was published in 2012, but it's actually been put out again in 2020, Our Common Destiny and the Anti-Communitarian Manifesto. And this particular book simply is that it's showing you what's going on. And it's not just happening here in the United States, it's happening all across the world. And so we are leaving a different perspective here, and a different, not perspective, but a different way of living. And we're watching it go up in smoke. Now, the only way to learn anything simply is to educate yourself and be well aware of what's going on. Is the only way you can defend yourself. We live in an age simply is that people take these freedoms for granted. And usually the media is not going to tell you the truth about any of this. They're just going to say this is far better for us and such and such. They won't even use the word communitarianism. They won't. That's not their plan, you see. But anyway, you can get her book easily. I posted it, I think, on my Facebook, and I can do it again under my name, and I'll do that tonight. But back to, I don't want to spend all night here. I basically just want to share some things that I feel critical that you need to be aware of. And simply is that there is a spirit, attitude. People today are just simply aren't aware of what's going on. There are too many problems. That's part of the other issue. All kinds of issues going on all around us. That is in the issue of our money is not worth anything. The people are just struggling to even who have a job. I mean, how many people are out of work? 40 to 50 million people here in America? Is that a conservative deal? Is that overemphasized, such and such? And then most are in debt. And then I watch people who are just completely in brain fog or not aware. They don't want to know any. I guess they just want to hide their heads underneath a rock and not seeing what's going on. You see, that is basically looking around you and seeing what I see simply is that people go out and destroy what I call, go out and buy stuff thinking that the government's going to save them when in reality it's not going to happen. And so you need to be aware of these things. You need to be aware that simply is that individual rights are Trump. But the key is also to getting back to what I call Lysander Spooner. And Lysander Spooner is probably the most brilliant man in dealing with, and yet it's all what I would call common sense. This is how you get out of the system, folks. You don't want to be a part of the system, the medical system, the political system, the educational system, the religious system. You see, all these are in tangent work together. And you can't work. You have to have a birth certificate to work. You have to have a birth certificate to, quote unquote, have a banking account. All these things are tied together to make sure that you cannot survive. That's what they want you to feel, but you can survive and you can actually work yourself away from this. It takes time, yes, but I don't have any type of health care, such and such. I just take care of myself. I take the responsibility. Most people don't want to take that responsibility. They want to eat and drink and do whatever they want to do, but they don't want to take responsibility for their health. They don't understand simply is that there are herbs out there that herbs could actually be beneficial for you. Also having right thinking, not to be discouraged. Don't speak negative towards yourself. Be positive who you are and understand that you are a far higher being than what you've been told. Part of what we've been told simply is that in education is that we're too stupid to know anything. So we have to go to education. We have to be educated. We have to be, quote unquote, programmed, which is what they're doing. They're programming us. They've been doing that for over 150 years in this country, you see. And then We think, oh, we're advancing ourselves, and they're just saying basically they're just using the system to keep you in a slave type set. You just keep walking and keep going on. Another system is the military. Another system, you see, people thinking they're fighting and protecting freedom for other people. That's all bullshit, folks. It's all bullshit, you see. And most people just pretend it's go away, and it's not going to go away, you see. And it's critical you understand it simply is that you need to read Lysander Spooner. Spooner's point out simply is none of us signed the Constitution. So in other words, it was a contract. You see, it was written for them. It wasn't written to you. It says we the people. Well, that has nothing to do with we the people. It has everything to do with them, the aristocrats, the powerful who have been in power all the time here in this country ever since its establishment. They're what I call aristocrats simply is certain family names have been in power. Fritz Spindelmeyer, I think his name is, he writes about all these famous, quote unquote, American people names. Well, they came from Europe here. They came here to make a living off the American so-called economy. And these family names have been around. And they've been around for a long, long time. And they changed their names a lot of times. All our presidents have been, quote unquote, European descent from royalty, not from common people, but from royalty, you see. And people just don't, it seems as though it just goes in their ear and back out. They don't even connect it. I think that's probably the reason why people have an issue with education simply is they don't teach you how to think anymore. They tell you how to think. In other words, you can't think on your own, you see. But I would suggest you read anything by Lysander Spooner. Brilliant man. A really weird name, Lysander. I don't know if anybody's name's Lysander, Lysander, Spooner. You know that he actually was able to run a business. He was competing against the Postal Service at one point. Are you aware that basically the Postal Service was charging far more in their day when he was in the 1800s, 1830s, 1840s? It was a monopoly. And Spooner got involved with this and was running what I call a mail service to actually, deal with the high postal stamps. People were being cheated and not getting good service. And so guess what? That all changed when Spooner got involved and put a pressure on him. Eventually, they wouldn't allow him to be involved, but then suddenly people woke up and realized that the Postal Service was ripping people off. You see, they were charging 20, 30 cents for sending a letter. Well, this is over 100 some years ago, 150 years ago. See, Spooner was a maverick. He also, the thing about Spooner was interesting is simply is that he actually was required in order for him to be a lawyer. He actually went to school for 2 years, and they wanted you to go to school for 5 years, you see. And Spooner said, I don't agree. And he actually argued a case. And guess what? He won that case because simply it was actually dealing with what I call he was seeing himself as being poor, and he was being treated in a wrong way. And he simply says, you can do this. And see, he did it. He proved it. And he's written probably, I would say 8 or 10 books. I'm sorry. They're all what I call easy to read. They're written for common men. They're actually brilliantly written in his way of doing. He didn't use any gobbledygook and all this stuff. And he actually eventually he actually became a lawyer, but then he realized it wasn't worth. He got bored and he started his own business. Interesting, isn't it? Think about that. Think about all the politicians that we have in Washington. Well, this is even in our own state, all the politicians, and guess what they are? All of them are all lawyers. You see, you understand that, don't you? They make law. That we have more laws than probably any other country in the world. There are books upon books upon books, statutes, and all this thing. No one knows if they're actually obeying the law or not because they don't even know all the laws. You see, so they make it so complicated, And then they write these laws, and they make these laws to actually make us guilty, you see. Instead, they portray that anyone is simply is that even if someone who steals a candy bar and a Coke or whatever at a store such as this because he doesn't have much money or whatever, the law is now against the poor man. You see, all he wanted was something to eat, and that they'll throw someone in jail for something like that. But yet someone gets murdered. It's a completely different ball game. You see, take someone's life. You have no right to take anybody's life. Period. Unless you have to defend yourself against someone who's trying to kill you. But it's just everything's been turned upside down. I've watched it. I see it around me. I'm 60 years old. I see. It was this literacy. What's going on now? You see, all these things that are going on, especially if you go and research things what go on in Portland and Seattle and how the city handles everything. There are many people who just basically have done wrong to other people on the streets, and there's no justice. You see, no justice at all. Well, that's going to quit. That's going about soon to stop here. You see, because we're entering another period of time. Time is simply not on their side anymore because the age of Pisces is dying out. You see, the water law, as I call it, the age of commerce and basically shipping items from state to state, that is federal governments to federal governments, or I shouldn't say that, to countries, to each country. It was done. All these things. And who would have the right? I mean, think of this, folks. Just think of it. What right does the people to own property? I mean, you say, well, what are you talking about, Brent? Well, the property, you see, we get confused simply. It's everyone's property, you see. And that is a right. Yes, you have a right to own your land, such and such. Yes, and do that. Yes. But it's not what you think. You see, we don't own the land because you have to pay taxes on it. So it's a form of property tax. So you don't own it. You never did own it. That's the misnomer of the whole thing. That's the confusion. People think I own my property. Yeah, you own your property unless you don't pay your taxes, your property taxes. And now simply is she points out, Nikki, in her book, pointing out simply is that, hey, they came in. This is a true story, folks. They came in a place where they were all living in Seattle, and they went in what I call they were all renters in apartments. And the man that owned the property, the building, they came in and they condemned the building because it had supposedly rats in it. They condemned it because it wasn't up to standards, which was an excuse to take the property. So the man who owned the property lost everything. He didn't get anything out of it. He lost his property. They said basically it's we condemned it. So the property was condemned. So it had no value except for those who were going to eventually build after they tear down the building. And they got that property for nothing. They stole the property. They stole not only the building, they stole the property the building was on. These are people, what we call, this isn't even capitalism. This has nothing to do with capitalism. This is the rich that come in and actually dominate and take people's property. You see, that day's coming. It's coming soon. And they know it. They know it's coming because they are well aware of it. Karma's coming. And it ain't gonna be nice neither for a lot of people because of how they've done people and mistreated people. But we can't wait for that. Sometimes we need to educate ourselves to be aware that simply is what they're doing and say, this isn't right. You have no right to do this. Yeah, they might get away with it. They'll pay a lawyer, a judge, which most people don't realize that judges are nothing but lawyers. They just simply are given another position and they claim simply you have a right to vote for these people. Well, guess what? They're all lawyers. So you don't have any choice. That's another thing you need to get out of. Stop voting. All you do simply is giving your energy away by voting, you see. The key is simply to educate yourself and understand what's going on and get yourself out of the system. That's the whole key. That's all the key is. This is another thing that people get confused about. I see it over and over again with people who are truthers on the internet, on Facebook. Oh, somebody goes out and marches against such and such of the city or whatever. Bullshit. It didn't do anything. Never has. All it is you going out there begging the government to please to help you, help me, help me, help me. You're actually saying they're the authority. And when you are the authority, you see? But in reality, simply is most of us are so trained that we see ourselves as a serfs. We see ourselves as a slave, although we don't say that, but we're begging the government such a mark. What you do is you pull yourself out of the system and say, I'm no longer going to be a part of it. And one of those things simply is you don't vote anymore. You stop voting. You say, to hell with it. I'm not going to vote because it's all been chosen in reality. And people say, well, you're letting evil come in. Well, what do you think's going on here? Both parties are evil. All the parties are control. They've always been control. And so with that, simply as you say, well, then if I don't vote, you take your name off. You not only don't vote, you go to them and you say, I want to be unregistered at this position, this office. I mean, this being a voter. I don't want to be registered anymore. That's how you begin to pull away from it. And you begin to do the same thing with the medical system. No, I don't need a doctor. No. And you do the same thing. Eventually, some of you young people will say, well, I'm not going to have my baby in a hospital. You know what? I'm going to have my baby at my home. And that keeps you out of the system. Do you dig what I'm saying here? This is how you defeat the system. You no longer give your energy to it. You follow? It's very clear. You have to stand up and be a man to do this. And that doesn't mean a woman has to be a man, but I'm saying it's to see these things. Because the reality simply is when you go in a hospital and you have a birth there, it's no longer your baby, folks. It's registered with the government. And so you've given away your most precious item, your child, to the government. And yes, they can come in and say, your children's got to go to school. They can almost force your children, because guess what? Because they're registered. What would you need to register your child for anything, folks? Tell me. Why? When you register your kids to such and such being in school, see, that's another thing. Why would you do this? Well, you have to have a proof of birth certificate. Why would I need that? That's again, paper. It's a figmentation. It's not a real world. It's third person. All of these things, you see, because they're making a straw man. You see, it's not a real man. It's not a real person. It's not a man or woman. You're seen by them as a person. And they feed off of you. You see? And you don't know any better because you've never been told anything different. And yet, when in reality, you know something's wrong. You know, why am I getting behind on everything? Why am I struggling with my job? Why, I know, for example, for me, when I applied for a job many years ago, you know what? I had an interview with a human being. I had an interview with a human being for that position. You follow? You don't do that anymore, folks. That's all gone. It's all done on a computer. You don't even get a chance to even speak to anybody. Do you understand how this has become such a racket? So what happens simply is that, guess what? You'd have less and less chances of getting a job. It used to be you knew somebody, maybe get a job, but look at the jobs now. Well, let's see. Can I work for Walmart? Well, they don't know me. Can I work because there's no one there. See, what I'm saying simply is there's no one of high authority or positions. They're not looking at that. See, this has all it's what they call it, human resources. You're a resource for being a human being. You're a slave. And you have to, the sad part simply is you're institutionalized. That is, you are, quote unquote, trained through the educational system to be what they want you to be. And you are told that basically you can be anything you want to be, but in reality, simply that's a lie. To them, you see, they teach you to be a part of the system. They teach you how to act in such and such. So you're no longer an individual. You see, you're a part of their system. And it's important that you get out of the system. It's important that you not be involved in the medical system. Do you know how bad it is in the hospitals, folks? Where they basically make errors that cost people's lives. I know a friend here in Augusta. Someone did something wrong and killed his mother by error. There, actually, when I had another friend who lived in Augusta, Georgia, worked at a hospital, and she was what they call a house, not house, but a what's the word I want to call it? She was a nurse, but she was a pharmacist, and her job was simply as a pharmacist on that particular floor. She was a floor pharmacist to make sure that the doctors wrote it properly, that she understood it, because they made mistakes themselves. She was a quote unquote safety check to make sure that things didn't go bad at that hospital. She was hired for that position to make sure that that pharmacy, that the drugs they gave out in that hospital to the patients there was given to the right people and the right amount. And guess what? They made oodles of mistakes. But they never bothered to deal with a doctor who does these type of things. He gets away with it. And their claim simply is that people sue them and that. Yeah, most of that's maybe true, maybe not. But you don't want to be a part of the medical system. You want to have your children. You want to have your children at home, folks. You really do. That's what we did 150 years ago. We had children, had babies in either out in the hay. I mean, my parents, not my parents, but my grandparents, guess what? They were born in a barn. You know, see, the body, this is how they've told us all this stuff. So many bad things can happen to us. When reality simply is, there are not many bad things it is. They just use fear. You see, the body reacts and knows when it's supposed to actually, all these cesareans, they do the C-sections. Those things are not normal. They're all artificial. It's not organic. If it's not organic and true natural, it's not right for you. You'll do all kinds of things on babies to damage them. So these things go on. And do you have a chance to fighting it back? Most people don't. Well, they're the experts. No, you're the expert. You have to be the expert. You're the authority too. When you go and wear these masks, you're saying they're the authority, when in reality, you are the authority. You are the authority. You got to understand that. You're not responsible to them. You're responsible to yourself. That's what it's called, being responsible. Having the ability to respond in the correct way. It's going to cost you, yes. You've got to do these things to get out of the system. The same thing with going to church, being in religion. You're not going to find the truth in religion. That's not, again, it's another crock. People don't understand simply when you get in religion, you are actually saying you need some Messiah to save you. You need somebody to save you, someone outside of you. You're the only one that can save yourself. You're the one responsible. You're responsible for those things. You see, it's not from somebody outside over here. It says he's a theologian, or he's got all these degrees in church doctrines. Well, church doctrines are, guess what? Those church doctrines are what they're created by man. They wasn't created by God or created by Jesus or whoever else you want to say who is involved. So they trap you all along here and they steal from you. They steal the essence of who you are. They steal energy from you. And they also do something else. They make you feel inferior. They make you feel inferior. Probably the most critical thing is that they make you feel inferior to them because they, quote unquote, have a specialized education or they know more than you do. Yeah, they know more bullshit than you know. That's what it's about, folks, and how to fool you. And so you have these thoughts, you have these negative thoughts because you've been told you're bad or you're not any good. Well, you need to stop it because that's not true. Yeah, I've got on a spill here. I need to. I didn't realize how fast this time goes by. It's 35 minutes here. The point simply is your rights. You're going to have to stand. And when I walk into grocery stores and places that have masks, I walk in with my mindset, I am the authority. I am the authority because I'm sending that energy out. Do you understand how powerful you are? You send that energy out from your aura. You know what? They know it. They feel it and they don't say anything to you. You know why? Because you are the authority. You don't have to wear these stinking masks. You see, they use this thing. They use to make you to feel fear. And that's all that's that the whole game with them is always about fear, keeping you in fear, keeping you pressed down, pushing you down, and keeping you saying, oh, you're inferior. There's two problems with the world, such as there are people who think they're superior, which is a wrong way of looking at things. And then there are others who simply see themselves as inferior. You see, and you don't need to be superior and you don't need to be inferior. You need to understand who you are and see you as yourself as a wonderful person, not in a fake way, but to speak positive of who you are and eliminate these lies that are actually this negative chatter that goes on inside your head up here. You see, the system that's part of the mental hospitals and such is preying upon other people too. They prey upon those who say, I hear these voices in my head. Yeah, we all hear those voices, and most of those negative thoughts in our heads is based upon simply either our inferiority, what we think, we're depressed, and what we do simply is that we conjure up these things and we think we fail, when reality simply is we haven't failed. This is your opportunity to turn around and see things in a true light and see that simply is that you're here for this time. You're here for this purpose. So I've done my spiel tonight, and I appreciate you listening. I hope that you will understand simply is that you're far greater than what you've been told. You're far greater. Don't let them steal your energy. You're far more precious. You have a heart. You care about people. The heart is by far the most important thing because it actually radiates. It's what keeps you alive. You see that, we actually have energy. We have electrical pulse. We're electrical, you see. See, if it wasn't electrical, and that's why the world, this planet is electrical, you see, because it's a heart. The word earth is the word heart, you see. The earth is the heart, and it has its own frequency too, you see. Okay. Well, wish you a good evening. Thank you, and have a great night, and take care.